Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Lina, thanks again for joining us this afternoon and this morning where you are. Um, a powerful film. What made you want to make it?
Well, I was born in Damascus and raised in Damascus for Palestinian father, Egyptian mother, and I have the Jordanian nationality. And I grew up holding my father's story, and I was not really sure I want to make it a movie till 2012 when I get for the first time in my life permission to be able to visit Palestine. I went to Deir Abu Mishal, my father's native village near Ramallah, and I spent 9 days with our family members. They live there, and that trip make me rediscover like the feeling of being a refugee, let's say, and I really feel this urgent need to make this reconciliation with the two main reality have shaped my identity. Like as a Palestinian refugee whose father was a resistance fighter, and as a daughter who lost, who his father was disappeared when she was 6.
Mm. And it's an absolutely it's a really moving story. And I think what strikes me about it all, of course, is that all of the drama is clearly in the past, but also in the background. Even if it's the story is still relevant now, we're looking at this from a very specific point of view, aren't we? It's from your discovery of your relationship with your father. Can you say more about that?
About my relation with my father.
Well, yes, because you're telling the story. It seems you're very specifically not with news events or with official reports. It's really just exploring through family members. And I wondered, was that a deliberate choice?
You know, it's like why I put it in this way, why I delivered in this way. Because I start the main idea when I start 7 years ago. Uh, I start with the main question, and it was more as investigation, like what really happened to my father, and I have the right to know what happened to my father.
Yeah.
But then I know later on I understood that I will not be able ever to hold the truth in my hands, and in that time it's returned more to be like a journey inside myself and a journey to understand how he make his choices and how his choices and how his absence shaped me the woman
Yeah.
I am today.
Yeah.
um, so I think it's reflect more and more like the trip being in my side and with my family to make this reconciliation.
And that so an interesting thing point you raised there, because of course you say this is a relationship that almost can't be complete in a way because it's ended before perhaps it reached fruition of some kind. And I wonder, um, was there a point when you're making the film when you thought, okay, the film is now complete, even if the investigation is? How did you decide when to
Hmm.
end and when to stop asking, or did you decide, or is it still ongoing?
Hmm. You know, because it's there were and there are still some open question in the movie about what happened to my father.
Yeah.
And 2016, when we made the main shooting and we filmed in Beirut, Egypt, Berlin, Jordan, and our the last stop was in the journey was Palestine. And when I was there, when I visit his school, when I see the pool where he learned to swim, when I see our family cemetery, and I finally understood what this Palestine that my father was fighting for.
Hmm.
And at that moment I felt this is the moment, and I understood that my movie, it's not about giving answers to those questions, but it's about the journey itself of finding those answers.
Yeah. Yeah. And seeing what they lead to. And I was struck
Yeah.
also by the sometimes quite different reaction that your brother had to the film that you were making to that you were having. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about that, if you could say more, because he was at one point he says he wouldn't want to die for Palestine, and clearly he felt very strongly about you and his son, but that his relationship to his father, whom sometimes he imagined meeting in the street, one day perhaps with amnesia or in some other circumstance, seemed to be quite different substantially from yours. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I think because we were five and we were differently impacted by his life and his absence. So it's totally different. So, for example, Iyad, he was 13. Najwa, she was almost 15 when he disappeared, while I was the six. So, for example, Najwa, she can use her memories of our father, while I had only my imagination to use to. So we were not supposed to speak about him out of the house, but inside the house we did not speak about him. So till 18, I was telling my friend who's asking about my father that he's alive and he's traveling. And then I understood that it was, imagination helped me. Imagination was the defense mechanism for me to digest the trauma of his absence.
Yeah. And so this leads me to wonder, then ask, and perhaps some of the viewers too, outside of your family circle, how other audiences received it, especially within the sort of nearby community, the local community, who might have known
Hmm.
him a bit better or known of him. How has the film been received?
In general, it has been very well received, I would say, but sometimes, for example, like the screen, I was in Palestinian Toronto Film Festival. So there were some people did not totally agree with me how I speak about Palestine and or how I deal with the concept of this big
Yeah,
cause.
yeah. And uh, do you feel, as a filmmaker from that region with its history, do you feel in any way obligated to address that? Because clearly people still, it's an unresolved issue politically, clearly, and it seems as though it's almost impossible to say anything about that space and people's relationship to it, which is not going to trigger a response that might not be welcome. I mean, do you feel obligated to manage that, or did you feel that there were other ways that you could address those people? Or if you
Uh,
felt that you needed to address them at all. So, in other words, if you talked about the experience of people who didn't agree with your view of Palestine at the Toronto Festival, how did that make you? Do you feel that that's something that you have to address at all um, in
I'm
this
not
film?
like in a way of obligate, but like I feel it's really necessary. Like it's something in my DNA, it's something in my identity. So
Yeah,
not even like the personal side as the daughter who lost her father, and as the historical line, like to be really reconciliation, to understand all of that period.
yeah,
Even some of this period, I would call it dark period, and nobody really want to talk about it in a way.
yeah,
I'm talking about what really happened between the Palestinians themselves.
yeah,
But in the end, of course, I found myself, I have to explain all of this because the matter that my father has been fighting for this land, which is still till now occupied, and I'm still a refugee. So I
yes,
don't think nothing will change till
yeah,
things should change in the beginning.
yes. And it's it also it seems to be that, and talking to others who have seen the film as well, they were also moved by the fact that the story was so personal that it really, even though it felt like a small investigation, there were huge themes involved, and somehow that seemed to be a very effective way of positioning this investigation. That in fact that it was just about, it seemed it centered on your discovery of your father through people who knew him best, or who might have known him best, and that somehow that seemed to be fitting. Now the what I'm curious about then is the connections that you were able to make with him. If you were able to make meaningful connections through what you learned, um, when talking to say your uncles or talking to others who
Mm.
might have known him. Um, did you find it was possible to make this? Were you able to personalize your understanding of your father as opposed to this man that everybody knew, who was sort of known for all these other political activities? Or was it did you struggle with that, or what was it like?
I mean, I did not, it was always for me not about, no, يعني it's about to know what happened to my father, but I was not judging him, or I was not, I want to reach to the goal that to say, yes, my father was a hero. I don't even believe in heroes in general. And I think one of the reasons that I grow up without father, so I don't really have this big image.
Yeah,
And at the same time, of course, I was prepared myself to understand that at that time, at my father's time, there was no space for personal stories. It was only one big cause, and it was Palestine. So it's totally also different time. And as I said, that I don't know him, so I trying to always. My imagination helped me a lot to build this image till I really was be able to make the movie, and finally as if we have like a memory, we share it all together in the family about my father.
yeah. And so, having made the movie now, now the finished process, and of course, people are viewing it, um, has it affected your view of yourself, or your view of the relation? In other words, it's I hesitate to say the process is complete, but we're maybe at a different stage now where it's being viewed by others. Has it changed you, do you think?
I think you should ask my therapist about this, but like in general, of course, it has been changed me a lot, because during all of these 7 years, like I did not really feel in a way, let's say, there is a serious dangerous, but I felt all the time that I'm really trying to push and to try to make it easy on other people, because it was my choice. So my family, that they were not really supportive in the beginning, but then they were involved. Also the friends of my father.
Yeah,
But like in the end, showing up your let it out your trauma, it's and sharing this with people, I think this is really helpful.
yeah, and hugely vulnerable. So, kudos to you for actually being able to
Yeah,
put that out there.
yeah, and actually, like after all of this time, I don't see like my life was very simple, but I think because of his life, because also of his absence, because of what he was believed for, I believe I feel now I can see myself more as a survivor
Yeah,
rather than a victim.
right, right. A very important process. We've got a question that's come through from Facebook, which I'll put to you, saying that Ibrahim the film has played at the Toronto International Film Festival and IDFA, also in the Netherlands, before the world closed down. And how do you find the online festival experience?
Well, it's it's totally different, but this is my third festival online, and it's not really the same for sure, because also you're not there, you're not making any serious connection. But in a way, like, and in this hard time, I think it's really great that some people were able to do these things.
Yeah, so I
This
think it was on at Copenhagen as well. So that seemed to that I hear it did well there too. Another question that's come up, and I'll put this to you, and the question is: it seemed like there was a turning point that occurred during the filming when you visited Palestine. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, it's totally the same point I was talking about, when I felt that because in one hand there was really many possibility, many stories about what happened for him, and like for a while I could find myself doing this for 15 years.
Yeah,
Of course, I will be alone with nobody and no producers, but no, there was really this feeling that I totally understand what he was fighting for
right.
when I was there, and also the reason because the turning point that I was hoping to really know some facts,
Yeah,
but because mainly like Abu Nidal group, even they are not power like before, but they are
yeah,
still exist. And this is make many people I try to contact, the friends of my father, they don't want to speak about it, they don't want to appear in the film. So it was quite difficult really to understand facts related to history line
And, and was
in a
that,
way.
were you able to detect, was that a sense of pain at the history, or was it a sense of possible present danger, or was it intrusion? What was driving that aversion?
Not really was I never really felt like a serious danger, but I know that there is many line I cannot cross, or I cannot cross many
Yeah,
limits.
of course.
And yeah, but actually really like the main concern, the main problem was to really facing my own monsters all
Yes.
during all these years, and to be
Yeah,
able to ready, like I felt I'm really ready when I was in Palestine to share it with people.
yeah. That must have been difficult. Well, I mean, what was it like? I mean, you talk about facing monsters. How did you manage?
I mean, with a lot, mainly with a lot of help with the friends around me, like the people who work with me. Rami Nihawi, he was the main partner for me. He was the co-writer, also the editor,
Yeah,
the DOP,
yeah,
and I mean, facing master in a way, because there was a time that you will not know really what kind of memory, for example, that it's now you remember, but
yeah,
you feel the heaviness, and you feel the,
yeah,
like as if you're really falling down in a very dark.
yeah.
And I still remember a very interesting sentence from my therapist, that he was telling me the huge pain does not come with the conscious,
Yeah.
so it goes away. And then when you, of course, like there was many things related to, even related to to my memory, what I can remember, what I thought that it's really happened, and then I discovered that I just imagined this,
Yes,
all
exactly.
of this.
Fascinating. This leads on to another question we've just had from Facebook. Um, and it says, the story is yours. Are you hoping to encourage any particular response from audiences?
I am sorry, I did not ask.
Yeah. Are you hoping to encourage, are you hoping to elicit or draw out any particular response from audiences? Or are you just throwing it out there and seeing what happens? What do you want?
I'm sorry, can I ask you to repeat it again?
Yes, I don't know if we're having a Zoom issue here. Let's try that again. So it's the story that the person who's asking the question writes, this story is yours. Are you hoping to encourage any particular response from the audience?
To encourage any, like what I am
How they
expecting.
feel about it? In other words, are you looking for any particular response? Yeah. And I think maybe the questioner is asking, and I don't know, they'll interpret if this interpretation is right, but maybe they're asking what, it's a very private story and clearly something that we can identify with thematically with the themes of loss and not knowing. But is there anything else that you hope the audience will get from this?
Um, no, actually, I hope that people like to. I was lucky to share my story, and
Yeah,
I know there is a lot of people has a story like me.
yeah,
And nowadays, I mean, that was maybe not really usual in the '70s, but nowadays, with what happening in all over the world, especially
yeah,
in the Middle East, in Syria,
yeah.
in Egypt, in many places, there is still many disappearance people. But I do believe that sharing stories and sharing trauma with each other, I hope it will help people think about even their life, their choices, even their traumas.
Yes. And we should acknowledge, of course, that we're in a bit of a moment right now with a lot of unrest as a result of the recent um, events in the United States with the killing of
Yeah,
George Floyd and
yes,
the
sure.
reverberations that are happening around the world and continue to happen where there's injustice. Um, so, that context perhaps is something that will help heighten people's awareness of these sorts of activities and these sorts of stories. I think I'm still drawn back to the notion, though, of course, that for people who haven't, or not from the region of the world where you come from, our understanding has been so limited in terms of how we understand people of Palestine and Syria and Jordan and Israel and elsewhere. Very limited to the news and what they tell us. And
Mm.
it is striking for me also, and I think hopefully valuable for audiences to see this story not told primarily through those channels as a way of bringing more humanity to that space. And I
I
hope that
agree.
we get to see more from you. I was asking just before we went on air about your if you have any upcoming projects and so on. And I think probably you're still recovering from this one. Um,
Yes,
but you know,
exactly.
yes. But I do congratulate you on making this film and having it in this festival. It's been wonderful to have. I hope we do see more from you. We certainly would welcome another
Thank you very
submission.
much, Justin.
Yes, you're welcome, and thank you for coming on.